Welcome back to True Crime with G-Man. This week we're going to be covering the gruesome murders of Felix Gamez Garcia and Barnabas Gamez Castro. Now these two were murdered in a quite horrific way by the Sinaloa Cartel, which is a part of Mexican cartel. They are reported to be running out of a city in Mexico actually called Sinaloa. According to reports from various, American sources and, I think even the American intelligence agencies, the Sinaloa Cartel, run by El Chapo, are reported to be one of the biggest suppliers of drugs in the world. So they're one of the most powerful, or they may even very well be the most powerful cartel out there. Now, the cartels have really come to prominence over the last few years, essentially with things like this, the video of these two men's brutal murder, but also they've been culturalized almost by shows like Narcos. Now, the shows like Narcos, they paint a very different picture to what life in the cartel is actually like. With those shows, you essentially see the dangerous element, which is legit, but it's also shown to be quite a extravagant lifestyle. Cars, women, stuff like that. Nothing could be further from the case. And the murder of these two men, and bear in mind, a lot of this is in Spanish, so I've had to do my research. I've gone onto various websites. I haven't seen the video myself. I don't want to. The pictures I've seen kind of speak for themselves. But I've read enough and done enough research to get a gist of what happened. Essentially, these two men are reported to have stole from the cartel. Now, when I talked over with this, because I spoke about this with a mate of mine here in Dublin, and he said, well, why would they steal? They're making enough money. No, they're not. They're making nothing for the jobs they're doing and the risks they're taking. They are making absolutely nothing. I'll touch on the two guys now in a sec, but the image of this, the video, went viral several years back. I think I would have been still in school at the time. Would have been about 2011. It was shared on several different gore sites. I believe you can still find the video, but personally, the images for me, when I seen them, they did enough. I don't want to watch the video. I have no intention of it. If you go on Reddit and you read about what people have seen, have said, they regret never watching it, I would recommend you just don't watch it. Now, there are some translations to what was said during the interrogation, which I'll get to in a sec. It is in Spanish, and they have translated it, some of it, to English. So it might not be 100% accurate, but I will do my best to dive in and try and break it down. But I'll touch on the two men who were involved in this horrific murder. Felix Garcia. Now, Felix Garcia was in with the cartel. He was known to have sold drugs in America, Phoenix, I believe. He was arrested and actually sent back to Mexico, where he was tasked with sending messages out for El Chulo, who was the acting leader of the Sinaloa cartel, given the fact that El Chapo was in prison at the time. He may still be in prison, actually, as far as I know. Barnabas was said to have got involved with the cartel through his nephew. So the nephew was the one who really went into the cartel. He was the one who chose that life. With Barnabas, you get the impression maybe money was related, God knows, but he decided to go in, and basically he ran a lot of errands for the cartel. One of the things he mentioned was that in his last errand that he ran for the cartel, he was paid approximately 300 pesos, which is the Mexican currency. Now, 300 pesos, for those living on this side of the water, if you're in Ireland, it would equate to, well, about €12. It actually probably equates to a bit less, but I'm just rounding it off to €12. If you're in the UK, you're talking about a tenner. So imagine that, people. These men are putting their lives on the risks. They're sacrificing serious time. There's a hell of a lot of things that can go wrong, and they're being paid in Western equivalent a tenner. To put this in context, full disclosure, where I live in Dublin, I've known several drug dealers. I've known several of them, and I've known several people who've done errands for them. Move a couple of things from one place to another. It's not a far distance, and they've told me that for doing one job, they've got €500. Now imagine that. I know we're in two different countries, but imagine that there are people here who don't even want to get involved, who will do one job and get 500 quid. That's their week paid for. And there's people in Mexico with the cartel putting their lives in serious danger, and they're getting the equivalent of 10 quid. It's not good either way. I wouldn't recommend anyone do it, irrespective of, however much it is. It's just not worth. That lifestyle is only going to send you one way, so I wouldn't recommend anyone do it. But again, we are painted out this picture that, the cartel is dangerous, but money is there. The reality is these people are making little and they're risking a hell of a lot. As I get to the interrogation basically starts with both guys saying, don't steal from the cartel. And if you witness something, basically keep your mouth shut. Barnabas stated that people should not get involved with the cartel because at this point, him and his nephew, their lives at this point were essentially worthless. The murders begin, and as I said, the pictures kind of tell you everything you need to know. I wouldn't recommend anyone watch this video if you can find it. For your own psyche, I would say just don't, because videos like that, they really do tend to mess with people's minds, and I don't mean in a sense that they turn people a certain way, but everything about it is just, from what, even the pictures are too graphic. I don't even want to hesitate to guess what the actual video was like. But Barnabas was decapitated by chainsaw. Very brutal, very, very brutal manner. Decapitated by a chainsaw. Was brutal and violent, and apparently the blood of Barnabas spilt all the way onto his nephew Felix. Both guys at the time, and it's crazy when you look at it, because both guys appear to have taken a few knocks before they've been basically beheaded. Both guys appear to seem almost resigned to their fate. There's no real signs of a struggle. They just, even in the pictures, they just seem to be kind of, we messed up, we know we did, this is what happens, we're resigned to our fates. But before, as I said, the execution, Barnabas stated that him and his nephew's life at this point were worthless. Felix Garcia, who, lest we forget, he was the one who was primarily involved with the cartel. Barnabas was brought in by his nephew, and I guess they kind of figured that, maybe we'll give him a quicker death, seeing as, yeah, he did rip us off, but at least he wasn't the one who was, front and center for most of these things. It was Felix. He wasn't given such a lucky death, by the way. He was killed in a very gruesome way by a hunting knife, which, from what I can estimate and what the general consensus is, it took about 2 to 5 minutes for them to complete the job on him, and he was alive through most of it. So, whilst Barnabas was probably killed relatively quickly, and the job would have been done relatively quickly by the chainsaw, still a gruesome way to go, at least it would have been done quick. With Felix, no, not so lucky. That was a long, drawn out process, and apparently, according to some various sites on Reddit, the actual video, when it was released at the time, you could hear the screams of it. I don't even want to think about that, to be honest with you. It's not exactly nice. I'm glad I've never seen it. I'm glad glad I didn't hear the noises of Felix Garcia. For me, it just doesn't appear to be worth it. Apparently, this is the life they choose. Well, I would say to anyone who is even looking at that life, thinking that it's a fun life, thinking that it's a life worth going down, I would say avoid that at all costs. I can't comprehend how people would want to take that risk. Even over here, where you see people who go down that road, they seem to have money for a brief time, but for me, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth anything. The people in the cartel, the crimes they do, the way they... Because, believe you me, this isn't an isolated incident. When I started researching cartels, there were several gruesome ways in which they've executed people. Some are horrific. And when you really delve into it, you realise that society and human beings, it is a bit like what the Joker said in the movie The Dark Knight. They're only as good as the world allows them to be. The people who do what these cartels do, there are people in Ireland, the UK, Scotland, Wales, America, Canada, etc., 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 who not only could look at that and not feel anything, but they could probably do that same murder as well. I'm serious, they probably could. If you think back to the days of the Tower of London, for example, and the horrific tortures that went on there were people who did them jobs. And in fact, anything, they might have been quite similar to the cartel in some ways in what they did. You had people designing Iron Maidens. For those who don't know what an Iron Maiden is, it's like a coffin, but with spikes in it. And they would pierce you just enough to cause lasting damage that you would die, but not enough to cause instant death. There was people who came up with these ideas and would do the beheadings, back in the Middle Ages. I think in France, even as far back as the 1980s. Who the hell were those kind of people? Because they wanted to do them jobs. They didn't just get put in that situation through bad choices. A lot of these would have wanted to do these jobs, And I believe it's the same with the Cartel. Crazy. That is the video in a nutshell. This video, I've kept it short. I want to do a Cartel video because I've been doing a lot of research on them. I find it quite interesting. Next week, I will get to normal videos reviewing murders and serial killers. I'll do a video early next week. We'll touch on some of them. I have a nice little crime from the state of Texas, you know, from Master Side, which I'll touch on next week. But for now, I'll leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed my analogy on this and giving my 2 cents on it. For now, I will ask you just to subscribe, like the video if you did. And for now, all the best.